The scent of jasmine and orange blossom clung to my skin like a lie I couldn't wash away. Someone had sprayed it on me hours ago. Or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell anymore. Time had become elastic in this marble prison they called a bridal suite, stretching and compressing until I felt dizzy with it. My fingers trembled as I traced the intricate beadwork on the wedding dress they'd forced me into, each crystal bead catching the afternoon light filtering through gauze curtains. The gown was exquisite, probably cost more than everything my family had ever owned combined, but it felt like a shroud. I pressed my palm against the cool window glass, watching the garden below where men in dark suits moved like chess pieces across perfectly manicured lawns. Security. Guards. Whatever pretty name they wanted to give to the human chains keeping me here. My breath fogged the window, obscuring my view of the world I'd been ripped from just 3 days ago. 3 days since Marco had burst into our tiny apartment above the bakery, his face pale as death itself, stammering about money he owed and people who didn't forgive debts. 3 days since my father, my kind, foolish father, had tried to negotiate with men who spoke in cold silence and carried guns under their expensive jackets. 3 days since they'd decided that I would pay for my brother's stupidity with my life, or whatever semblance of life remained after today. "Miss Rossi, it's time." The voice belonged to an older woman, with steel-gray hair and eyes that held no sympathy. She'd been assigned to me like a warden to a prisoner, ensuring I didn't run, didn't scream, didn't do anything that might embarrass the man I was about to marry, a man I'd never met, a man whose name people whispered with equal parts reverence and terror. Dante Moretti. Even thinking his name made my stomach clench. I'd heard stories, of course. Everyone in our neighborhood had. The young king of the underworld, they called him. 28 years old, and already commanding an empire built on fear and blood. They said he was ruthless, that he'd taken control of his family's operations at 23 after his father's murder, consolidating power with a brutality that made older, more established bosses fall in line or fall silent permanently. They said he was beautiful too, in the way a blade is beautiful, sharp, cold, deadly. "I need a moment," I whispered, my voice barely audible. The woman's expression didn't change. "You've had 3 days of moments. The guests are seated. The priest is waiting. Mr. Moretti doesn't appreciate delays." Mr. Moretti. As if calling him that made him civilized, made this transaction anything other than what it was. A business deal sealed with my surrender. I turned from the window, catching my reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back looked like a ghost of someone I used to know. The dress transformed me into something ethereal and untouchable, all ivory silk and delicate lace. They'd pinned my dark hair up in an elaborate style I'd never have managed myself, leaving a few curls to frame my face. The veil, layers upon layers of tulle, waited on a nearby chair, ready to complete my transformation into whoever Dante Moretti expected his bride to be. "The veil," the woman said, approaching with it. "Mr. Moretti specifically requested the traditional style, full coverage. Of course he did. Why would he want to see the face of the woman he was purchasing? I was just another asset, another piece of property to add to his collection. My stomach twisted again, this time with something darker than fear. Rage, maybe, or grief for the life I'd never get to live. The woman positioned the veil over my head, and my world narrowed to a soft, gauzy filter. Everything became dreamlike, distant. Maybe that was better. Maybe I could pretend this wasn't happening, that I wasn't walking toward a future that felt like death by 1,000 cuts. "Your bouquet." She thrust white roses into my hands. Their fragrance mixed with the jasmine on my skin, cloying and overwhelming. One of the thorns had been missed in the wrapping, and it pricked my thumb through the satin ribbon. A tiny bead of blood welled up, red against pale skin. I watched it, fascinated by this small proof that I was still real, still human, still capable of bleeding. The door opened, and my father stood there, looking 20 years older than he had last week. His suit was borrowed, too tight across his shoulders, and his eyes couldn't meet mine. Guilt radiated from him like heat from a furnace. Marco had disappeared the day after making his confession, leaving our father to negotiate with monsters on his behalf. Some negotiations. They'd wanted blood or money. We had neither, so they'd taken me instead. "Sophia," my father started, his voice breaking. Don't. I cut him off, unable to bear whatever apology he thought might absolve him. "Just don't." He offered his arm, and I took it because I had no choice, because my legs barely felt strong enough to carry me anyway. We walked through corridors lined with more flowers, more opulence, more evidence of wealth so vast it could purchase human beings like produce at a market. The music started. Something classical and haunting that I didn't recognize. The doors ahead opened, revealing a private chapel transformed into something from a fever dream. Candles everywhere, their flames casting dancing shadows across walls covered in climbing roses. The pews held maybe 30 people, all strangers, all watching as I approached my execution dressed as a bride. And at the altar, with his back to me, stood a figure that made my breath catch despite everything. Even from behind, Dante Moretti radiated power. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my father's bakery would make in a year, tailored so perfectly it looked like a second skin. His dark hair was styled in a way that seemed effortless, but probably wasn't, and his stance, feet slightly apart, shoulders back, spoke of absolute confidence. 2 men flanked him, dressed identically, their eyes scanning the room constantly. His security, always present, always watching. My father's grip on my arm tightened as we walked down the aisle. Each step felt like walking underwater. Everything slow and surreal. I could feel eyes on me, assessing, judging, but I kept my gaze fixed on the back of Dante's head, on the man who held my future in hands I'd heard could break bones without hesitation. We reached the altar, and my father practically pushed me forward before retreating to his seat. I stood there, alone, the veil still obscuring my vision, turning everything soft and blurred. The priest began speaking in Italian, words about sacred bonds and eternal commitment that felt like mockery under these circumstances. Dante still hadn't turned around. He stood rigid, almost bored, as if this entire ceremony was just another tedious business meeting. Maybe to him it was. The bride and groom will now face each other, the priest announced. My heart hammered so hard, I thought it might burst through the beaded bodice of my dress. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading. The moment when the man who'd purchased me would finally look at what he'd bought. Dante turned, and even through the veil, I could see him. Could see the sharp lines of his jaw, the proud nose, the full lips pressed into a neutral line. Could see the way his dark eyes, almost black in the candlelight, swept over me with cool assessment. He was beautiful, just as they'd said. Beautiful in a way that felt dangerous, like staring at the sun. Tall, probably 6'2" or 6'3", with broad shoulders and a lean, muscular build his suit couldn't hide. His face was all elegant angles and aristocratic features, the kind of face that belonged on Roman statues, immortalized in marble. But it was his eyes that held me frozen. They were empty, cold, looking at me like I was a contract to be signed. Nothing more. The priest continued speaking, something about the traditions of unveiling the bride. Dante stepped closer, each movement controlled and deliberate. He smelled of sandalwood and something else. Whiskey, maybe, or aged leather, expensive. Everything about him screamed expensive, controlled, dangerous. His hands rose toward my veil, and I couldn't help it. I flinched. Just a tiny movement, barely perceptible, but his hand stilled. For a heartbeat, we stood frozen, his fingers inches from the tool that separated us. I could feel the heat radiating from him, could sense the coiled strength in his frame. This close, he was overwhelming, taking up all the oxygen in the space between us. Then he moved again, grasping the edge of the veil with long fingers that I noticed, even in my terror, bore no rings except one, a heavy signet ring on his right hand, engraved with a crest I couldn't quite make out. He lifted the veil slowly, methodically, each layer peeling back to reveal more of my face to his scrutiny. The gauze lifted away, and suddenly the world came into sharp, terrible focus. The candles burned brighter, the roses smelled stronger, and Dante Moretti's face, inches from mine, became crystal clear. I watched something flicker across his features. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. His eyes widened fractionally, his lips parted slightly, and his hand, still holding the veil, went completely still. He stared at me like he'd seen a ghost, like I was something impossible made flesh before him. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and strange. People began shifting in their seats. The priest cleared his throat, but Dante didn't move, didn't speak, just kept staring at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle with awareness. Dante? One of the men beside him, his best man, I supposed, murmured quietly. A warning, or maybe a question. Dante blinked, seeming to come back to himself. His expression shuddered immediately, that cold mask slamming back into place, but I'd seen it. That moment of shock, of something raw and unguarded that he'd quickly buried. Continue, he said to the priest, his voice deep and smooth, carrying an accent that suggested expensive boarding schools and cultured upbringing. But there was steel underneath, an edge that made it clear he was used to being obeyed without question. The priest hesitated, then launched into the vows. Traditional Catholic wedding vows that I was supposed to repeat, promising to love, honor, and obey a man who'd bought me like furniture. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I spoke them because what choice did I have? My father's life depended on this. My own survival depended on this. When it came time for Dante to speak his vows, his eyes never left my face. He recited the words flawlessly, but I barely heard them. I was too focused on trying to understand what I'd seen in those first unguarded seconds. Why had he looked at me like that? Like I mattered. Like I was more than just a transaction. The rings, the priest prompted. The best man produced 2 bands. 1 thick platinum for Dante, 1 delicate diamond-encrusted circle for me. Dante took my hand, and the contact sent electricity racing up my arm. His skin was warm, his grip firm, but not painful. He slid the ring onto my finger, and I noticed his hand was completely steady, while mine trembled like a leaf in a storm. My turn. I took his ring with shaking fingers, nearly dropping it before managing to slide it onto his hand. It looked right there, somehow, natural. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest declared. "You may kiss the bride." Panic flooded through me. I hadn't thought about this part, about having to kiss him, about having to pretend intimacy with a stranger who'd bought me. Dante stepped closer, one hand coming up to cut my jaw. His touch was gentle, surprisingly so, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone in a gesture that might have been tender if I didn't know better. He leaned in, and I closed my eyes, unable to watch. His lips brushed against mine. Soft, warm, barely there. A kiss for show, for the witnesses, nothing more. But just before he pulled away, I felt him hesitate, felt his hand tighten slightly on my jaw, felt his breath hitch against my mouth. Then he was stepping back, his hand falling away, his expression blank once more. The chapel erupted in polite applause. I stood there, now Sophia Moretti, belonging to a man I didn't know, trapped in a life I didn't choose. Dante offered his arm, and I took it automatically. We walked back down the aisle together, his body rigid beside mine, my hand resting on his forearm, feeling the tension coiled beneath his suit jacket. The doors opened to reveal a waiting car, a black Mercedes with tinted windows, and a driver standing at attention. 2 more security vehicles were visible beyond it. Of course. A man like Dante Moretti didn't go anywhere without an army. He handed me into the car with impersonal efficiency, then slid in beside me. The door closed, sealing us in leather-scented silence. The driver pulled away from the chapel, and I watched through the window as the only world I'd ever known disappeared behind us. "We need to talk." Dante's voice made me jump. I turned to find him watching me with that same intense focus, his body angled slightly toward mine in the spacious back seat. "About what?" I managed, proud that my voice didn't shake. "About why you look exactly like the woman my father was going to marry before someone put a bullet in his head." The world tilted, my vision blurred at the edges. And the last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was Dante's hand reaching out to catch me as I fell. I woke to the smell of leather and cologne, my cheek pressed against something warm and solid. For a disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was, why my body felt heavy and strange, why expensive fabric rustled against my skin with each breath. Then it all came rushing back, the wedding, the veil. Dante's face when he'd seen me, his words about his father, about someone who looked like me, about bullets and death. I jerked upright, realizing with horror that I'd been leaning against Dante's shoulder. He sat perfectly still beside me, one arm extended along the back seat behind me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from him. His other hand held a phone to his ear, and he was speaking rapid Italian in a low, controlled voice that somehow sounded more dangerous than shouting would have. "No, Marco. I don't care what Romano thinks. Double the security at the warehouse and have Luca run background on everyone hired in the last 6 months. Yes, everyone." He paused, listening, his jaw tightening. "Because my wedding day seems like an excellent time for our enemies to make a move, and I won't be caught unprepared." He ended the call without saying goodbye, slipping the phone into his jacket pocket before turning those dark, assessing eyes on me. "You fainted." I noticed. My throat felt dry, my voice hoarse. "Where are we?" "Almost home." He reached forward, opened a small compartment, and retrieved a bottle of water. He opened it before handing it to me, the gesture somehow both considerate and controlling, taking care of me while making it clear he was in charge even of this small thing. I took the water because my throat burned, because refusing would be petty and pointless. The cool liquid helped, but it couldn't wash away the fear coating my insides. I studied him from the corner of my eye as I drank. In the car's dim interior, he looked different than he had at the altar. Less like a statue, more like a man. A dangerous man, yes, but still flesh and blood. You said I look like someone, I ventured, my fingers tightening on the water bottle. Your father's fiancé? Dante's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or rage carefully buried. Isabella Conti. They were engaged 15 years ago. I was 13. He shifted slightly, and I caught a glimpse of a shoulder holster under his jacket. Of course he was armed. Probably always was. 3 days before the wedding, my father was shot outside his office. 5 bullets. He died before the ambulance arrived. The water turned to ice in my stomach. I'm sorry. Are you? His tone was neutral, but there was an edge beneath it. Your brother stole $200,000 from one of my clubs. Money that was already promised elsewhere, to people who don't accept excuses. He put your entire family in an impossible position. I know. The words came out bitter. Believe me, I know exactly what Marco did. Do you? Dante leaned forward, and suddenly the spacious back seat felt tiny. Do you know that the Romanos wanted your father's hands for the disrespect? That the Castellanos suggested your mother might work off the debt in one of their establishments? Do you understand what I saved you all from by offering an alternative? My hands shook so badly that water sloshed over the rim of the bottle. An alternative? You bought me like property. I married you. His voice dropped lower, colder. There's a difference. As my wife, you're untouchable, protected. No one in our world would dare lay a hand on you without signing their own death warrant. How generous. I couldn't keep the sarcasm from my voice, even though every instinct screamed at me to be careful, to not provoke the predator sitting inches away. Something dangerous flashed across his face. He reached out, and I flinched, but he only took the water bottle from my trembling hands, setting it carefully in the cup holder. When he looked at me again, his expression had shifted into something I couldn't read. Let me make something very clear, Sophia. My name on his lips sent an unwanted shiver down my spine. I don't know why you look so much like Isabella. I don't know if it's coincidence or something more calculated, but I will find out. Until then, you'll stay close, where I can see you, where I can protect you from whoever might want to use this resemblance against me. Protect me. I laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. You're the one I need protection from. His jaw clenched. You think I'm the danger here? You have no idea what's out there, Kara. No idea what men in my world do to vulnerable women they think they can use as leverage. He leaned even closer, invading my space completely. But you're about to learn. Because as of today, you're not just Sophia Rossi anymore. You're Sophia Moretti. And that name comes with enemies you can't even imagine. The car slowed, turning through massive iron gates that opened automatically. Beyond them, a driveway wound through manicured grounds toward a house that made me forget how to breathe. It wasn't a house. It was an estate. 3 stories of pale stone and endless windows, with wings extending on either side of a central entrance that featured columns and architectural details that belonged in a museum. This is where you live? The question came out as barely a whisper. Where we live now. Dante's correction felt like a brand. 32 rooms, 15 acres, security better than most government buildings. The only place in the city where I can guarantee your safety. Or guarantee my imprisonment, I thought, but didn't say. The car stopped in front of the main entrance, where a man in a black suit immediately opened Dante's door. Another opened mine, offering a hand to help me out. I took it because my legs felt weak, because the wedding dress made movement difficult, because everything about this day had left me feeling hollowed out and unsteady. Dante came around the car, dismissing the men with a subtle gesture before offering his arm. Come. I'll show you to your room. You'll want to rest before dinner. My room? I looked at him sharply. Not our room? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or approval. Did you think I'd force myself on my unwilling bride? His voice carried an edge of dark amusement. I may be many things, Sophia, but I'm not a rapist. You'll have your own space, your own sanctuary, if you will. I didn't trust it. Didn't trust him. But I had no choice except to take his arm and let him lead me up the stone steps. The front door opened before we reached it, held by a middle-aged woman in professional attire who looked me over with shrewd, assessing eyes. Mrs. Chen, Dante said. This is my wife, Sophia. She'll be taking over management of the household. Please ensure all the staff are made aware. Mrs. Chen's expression didn't change, but I saw calculation in her gaze. Of course, Mr. Moretti. Welcome, Mrs. Moretti. I've prepared the East Wing suite as you requested. The interior of the house stole what little breath I had left. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, artwork that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. A massive staircase curved up to the second floor, its banister gleaming dark wood carved with intricate designs. Everything spoke of old money, established power, a legacy built on foundations I didn't want to examine too closely. Dante guided me up the stairs, his hand settling on the small of my back, possessive, proprietary. I wanted to shake it off but didn't dare. Other staff members appeared and disappeared like ghosts, all of them watching us with expressions carefully neutral. How many people worked here? How many eyes would be tracking my every move? We reached the second floor and walked down a corridor lined with more art, more evidence of wealth so vast it seemed obscene. Finally, Dante stopped at a set of double doors. He pushed them open, revealing a suite that looked like something from a luxury magazine. The bedroom was enormous, dominated by a 4-poster bed draped in silk. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the grounds, offering views of gardens and distant trees. A sitting area, with a fireplace, occupied one corner. 2 more doors led to what I assumed were a bathroom and closet. Your sanctuary, Dante said, his voice unreadable. The closet has been stocked with clothes in your size. The bathroom has everything you should need. If you require anything else, press 9 on the phone. Someone will assist you. I walked into the room slowly, my heels clicking on hardwood floors, partially covered by Persian rugs that probably cost more than my father's bakery. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was a gilded cage. Where's your room? The question escaped before I could stop it. Dante's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on someone less dangerous. Across the hall. Close enough to protect you, far enough to let you breathe. He paused in the doorway. Dinner is at 8. Mrs. Chen will send someone to help you dress. I can dress myself. I'm sure you can. His eyes traveled over me slowly, assessing in a way that made heat crawl up my neck. But you're the wife of Dante Moretti now. Appearances matter. Everything matters. He stepped back into the hallway. Rest, Sophia. You look exhausted. The doors closed, and I heard the soft click of a lock. I rushed forward, testing the handle. It opened easily, not locked, not trapped. But when I peered into the hallway, I saw a man in a dark suit positioned near the stairs, his posture alert, his jacket bulging slightly in a way that suggested a weapon underneath. Not locked, just watched. I closed the door and leaned against it, the wedding dress suddenly feeling suffocating. I reached back, fumbling with the buttons, finally managing to unfasten enough of them to let the heavy gown slide down my body and pool on the floor. Standing in just my undergarments, I felt vulnerable and exposed despite being alone. The bathroom was as spectacular as everything else. Marble and gold fixtures, a tub large enough to swim in, a separate shower that could fit 4 people. I turned on the shower, letting the water heat while I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I looked different. My makeup was smudged from fainting, my carefully styled hair coming undone, but it was my eyes that held me frozen. They looked haunted, shocked, like someone who'd just watched their life end. The shower beckoned, promising to wash away the jasmine perfume, the feel of Dante's hands on my face, the memory of his lips against mine. I stepped under the spray and let the water run hot enough to hurt, scrubbing at my skin until it turned pink, trying to erase the sensation of being owned. But no amount of washing could change what had happened. I was married, bound, trapped in a world I didn't understand. Married to a man who looked at me like I was a ghost, who spoke of protection while keeping armed guards outside my door. I thought of Isabella Conti, the woman I apparently resembled. What had happened to her after Dante's father died? Had she mourned? Had she moved on? And why did I look like her? Was it truly coincidence, or was there something darker at work? The water finally ran cold, shocking me back to the present. I stepped out, wrapping myself in a towel softer than anything I'd ever touched. The closet Dante had mentioned turned out to be a room unto itself, lined with clothes still bearing designer tags. Dresses, suits, casual wear, shoes organized by style and height. Everything in my size, as promised. Everything chosen by someone who knew exactly what a mafia wife should wear. I pulled on a simple black dress, something modest and unremarkable, refusing to play dress-up in the costume of whoever Dante expected me to be. My hair dried in waves down my back, and I left it loose, another small rebellion. The phone on the bedside table showed 6:47, more than an hour until dinner, more than an hour to sit in this beautiful room and contemplate my new reality. I walked to the windows instead, looking out over the grounds. The gardens were impressive. Roses, hedges trimmed into geometric shapes, paths winding through carefully cultivated beauty. In the distance, I could see the wall that surrounded the property, topped with cameras and sensors. A fortress, Dante had called it. A prison, I thought. Movement caught my eye. Below, near a fountain, Dante stood talking to two men. Even from this distance, his commanding presence was evident. He'd changed from his suit into dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with lean muscle. He gestured as he spoke, and the two men listened with absolute attention, one of them taking notes on a tablet. As if sensing my gaze, Dante looked up. Even from 2 stories away, I felt the impact of his stare. He held my eyes for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before returning his attention to his men, but he'd known exactly where to look. As if he'd been aware of me watching. As if he tracked my presence even when I thought I was unobserved. A knock on the door made me jump. "Mrs. Moretti?" A young woman's voice, tentative. "Mr. Moretti asked me to help you prepare for dinner." I opened the door to find a girl maybe 20 years old, with kind eyes and nervous hands. "I'm Maria," she said. "I'll be assisting you. May I come in?" What choice did I have? I stepped back, letting her enter. She moved to the closet with practiced efficiency, emerging with a different dress. Deep burgundy, elegant but not overtly sexy, with a neckline that suggested sophistication without revealing too much. "Mr. Moretti chose this one himself," Maria said softly. "He said it would suit you. Of course he had. Of course he was controlling even this." I wanted to refuse, to insist on the black dress I'd chosen, but something in Maria's anxious expression stopped me. She was just following orders, just trying to survive in this world like I was. I let her help me into the dress. It fit perfectly, skimming my curves without clinging, the fabric rich against my skin. She styled my hair into a sophisticated twist, leaving a few tendrils loose to frame my face. Minimal makeup, just enough to look polished. When she finished, I barely recognized myself in the mirror. I looked expensive, untouchable, like I belonged in this world of wealth and danger. "Beautiful," Maria whispered. "Mr. Moretti will be pleased." I didn't care about pleasing Dante Moretti, but I was learning that in this new life, what I wanted mattered very little. Maria led me back downstairs to a formal dining room where a table set for 2 waited beneath a chandelier that probably cost more than my childhood home. Dante stood by the window, a glass of what looked like whiskey in his hand. He turned as I entered, and something flashed in his eyes. Appreciation, possession, something darker I couldn't name. "You look perfect," he said, moving toward me with predatory grace. He took my hand, lifted it to his lips, and pressed a kiss to my knuckles that felt like a brand. "Shall we eat, wife?" The chair Dante pulled out for me was antique, probably worth more than my father's entire bakery. I sat because refusing would be childish, because I was learning to pick my battles in this new world where everything felt like a test I hadn't studied for. He settled across from me, his movements fluid and controlled, and I noticed how even here, in his own home, at his own table, he positioned himself with his back to the wall, eyes on the door, always watching, always prepared. Staff appeared silently, placing plates before us with the kind of precision that spoke of extensive training. The food looked like art, delicate arrangements of ingredients I couldn't all identify, everything perfectly composed. A far cry from the simple pasta and bread I'd grown up eating. "You're not eating." Dante's observation wasn't a question. I picked up my fork, moved food around my plate. "I'm not hungry." "You fainted earlier. You need to eat." He cut into his own meal with efficient movements, but I noticed he watched me more than his food. "Try the risotto. Chef Marco is exceptional." "Another Marco." The words came out bitter. "Seems like a popular name in your world." His lips quirked slightly. "Your brother made poor choices, Sophia. But he's family. That means something, even in my world. Especially in my world." "Family." I set down my fork, unable to pretend anymore. "You don't know anything about my family. About what it was like growing up above a bakery, flour in our hair, living paycheck to paycheck but happy. Actually happy, not just wealthy." Dante's expression hardened. "You think money is what defines me? What defines this?" He gestured around the opulent room. "This is security, protection, power to keep what's mine safe from those who would take it. And now I'm yours?" The question hung between us like a blade. "Another possession to protect?" He set down his own fork, his dark eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You became mine the moment you walked down that aisle." The moment I put that ring on your finger. Yes, Sophia, you're mine now. And I protect what's mine with everything I have. Something in his tone, possessive, absolute, sent heat crawling up my spine. Not fear, exactly, though that was there too. Something more complicated, more dangerous. I want to know about Isabella. I forced the words out, needing to understand, needing something to make sense in this impossible situation. If I look so much like her, I deserve to know why. Dante studied me for a long moment, his fingers drumming once against the table, the first restless gesture I'd seen from him. Finally, he reached for his whiskey, took a slow sip, and leaned back in his chair. Isabella Conti was 23 when my father met her. Beautiful, intelligent, from a respectable family with no connections to our world. He was 45, widowed for 3 years. My mother died when I was 10, cancer. He paused, something painful flickering across his features. He fell hard for Isabella, completely. I'd never seen him like that, not even with my mother. He was transformed. I found myself leaning forward despite my intention to remain distant. What happened to her? After your father died? She disappeared. His jaw clenched. The day after the funeral, she was gone. No note, no explanation. Her family claimed they had no idea where she'd gone. Every resource I had, even at 13, I used to try to find her. Nothing. It was like she'd never existed. Maybe she was grieving, or maybe she was involved. The words came out sharp, edged with old pain. Maybe she knew what was coming. Maybe she was part of it. The implication hung heavy in the air. You think she helped kill your father? I don't know what to think. He drained his whiskey, set the glass down with controlled precision. For 15 years, I've searched for answers, for her. And then you walk down that aisle and it's like seeing a ghost, like the universe is playing some sick game. I touched my face self-consciously. I'm not her. I'm just me, Sophia Rossi. Nobody important. Sophia Moretti, he corrected, his voice dropping lower. And you're important because I say you are. Because you're my wife. Because... He stopped, seeming to catch himself. Because I need to understand this connection. A staff member entered to clear our barely touched plates, and the moment broke. Dante stood, buttoning his jacket. There's something I want to show you. Every instinct screamed not to follow him deeper into this house, deeper into his world. But curiosity won over caution. I rose, letting him guide me through corridors I hadn't seen before, past rooms I couldn't begin to guess the purpose of, until we reached a door that required both a key and a fingerprint scan to open. The room beyond stole my breath. It was a study, but not like any I'd seen before. One wall was entirely covered with information. Photos, documents, maps, strings connecting various pieces like some detective's obsession made manifest. And in the center of it all was a photograph of a woman who could have been my twin. I walked toward it slowly, my legs feeling disconnected from my body. Isabella Conti stared back at me from the photo, and it was like looking into a mirror across time. Same dark hair, same bone structure, same full lips and wide eyes. The resemblance was uncanny, impossible, terrifying. Now do you understand? Dante's voice came from directly behind me, close enough that I could feel his breath on my neck. Why I couldn't just ignore your brother's debt. Why I had to have you close, where I could watch you, study you, figure out what this means. I spun to face him, finding him much closer than I'd expected. I'm not part of some conspiracy. I didn't even know your father existed until 3 days ago, didn't you? He reached out, his fingers catching a strand of my hair that had escaped its pins. Or is that just what you want me to believe? This is insane. I tried to step back, but the wall of information was behind me. You're seeing connections that aren't there because you want answers so badly you'll find them anywhere. His hand moved from my hair to my jaw, tilting my face up to his. Then explain it. Explain how you look exactly like the woman who vanished after my father's murder. Explain the coincidence. I can't. Frustration and fear made my voice shake. I don't know anything about Isabella Conti. My parents met in Naples 27 years ago. They moved here before I was born. We're nobody, Dante. Just ordinary people who got caught up in my brother's stupidity. He studied my face like he could read truth in the lines of it, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone in that same gesture from the chapel. You're terrified right now. I can feel you trembling, but you're not lying. Unless you're the best actress I've ever encountered. I'm not lying. I held his gaze even though it felt like staring into a furnace. I'm just a baker's daughter who got sold to pay off a debt. Something shifted in his expression. Anger, maybe, or frustration. His hand dropped from my face, and he turned away, moving to a desk cluttered with more files. Your family history. Where were your parents from originally? My mother was from Naples, like I said. My father from somewhere smaller, I think. He never talked about it much. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling cold despite the room's warmth. Why does this matter? Because everything matters. He pulled out a file, flipped through pages. Conti. That was Isabella's maiden name. Her family was from the Campania region. Small fishing village. He looked up sharply. Where did you say your father was from? Ice formed in my veins. I don't know exactly. Somewhere small. Near the coast, maybe? Dante's eyes narrowed. Your father's full name? Antonio Rossi. Mother? Lucia Rossi. Maiden name Ferraro. He made a note, his mind clearly working through possibilities I couldn't begin to follow. I'll have someone look into it. If there's a connection, I'll find it. And if there isn't? If this really is just bizarre coincidence? He moved toward me again, each step deliberate. Then I'll have married a beautiful woman who looks like my father's lost love, and I'll have to figure out what to do about that. The way he said, beautiful, sent unwanted heat through my chest. I tried to focus on the danger, on the possessiveness, on everything wrong about this situation. But standing in his private sanctuary, surrounded by 15 years of his obsession, I saw something I hadn't expected. Pain, deep, unresolved pain that had shaped him into this hard, controlled man who trusted nothing and no one. How old were you when he died? I asked softly. You said 13. His expression shuddered. That's not relevant. It is, though. I took a tentative step closer. You were just a kid. You lost your mother at 10, your father at 13. That's enough. The word cracked like a whip. My past isn't up for discussion. What matters is the present. What matters is keeping you safe while I figure out what this resemblance means. Safe from what? You keep saying that, but a phone buzzed. Not the one in his pocket, but one on the desk. A red phone that looked somehow more serious than the others. Dante moved to it immediately, his entire demeanor shifting into something harder, more dangerous. Talk, he said without preamble. Then his face went completely blank. When? A pause. How many? Another pause, longer this time. Lock down the compound. Nobody in or out without my explicit authorization. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call and turned to me, his eyes cold in a way that made me understand why people feared him. We're moving you to the safe room. What? Why? Because someone just tried to hit one of my warehouses. Because they failed, which means they'll be looking for softer targets. Because until I know who and why, you're the most vulnerable piece on the board. He was already moving, his hand gripping my elbow, pulling me toward the door. Dante, wait. No waiting, no questions. Right now, you do exactly what I say when I say it. We were in the corridor now, moving fast. 2 men appeared from nowhere, flanking us. Marco, take Mrs. Moretti to the panic room. Stay with her. Nobody gets in, nobody gets out until I give the all clear. Yes, boss. Dante, I tried again, fear making my voice sharp. He stopped abruptly, turning to frame my face with both hands. I know you're scared. I know you don't trust me, but right now, your life might depend on doing what I say. Can you do that? I stared into his eyes, seeing the urgency there, the barely controlled violence coiling under his skin. Whatever was happening, it was serious. Deadly serious. Yes, I whispered. Something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe, or approval. He pressed a hard, quick kiss to my forehead. Good girl. Go with Marco. I'll come for you when it's safe. Then he was gone, moving down the corridor with lethal purpose, already on his phone, already issuing orders in that cold, commanding voice. Marco. Not my brother Marco, a different Marco, older and scarred, gestured toward a different corridor. This way, Mrs. Moretti. Quickly. I followed because I had no choice, my mind racing, an attack, on Dante's operations. Did that mean I was in danger too? Or was this about something else entirely? We descended stairs I hadn't known existed, going down, until we reached a reinforced door that required multiple security measures to open. Beyond it was a room that looked like a luxury bunker. Comfortable furniture, supplies, monitors showing various views of the property. You'll be safe here, Marco said, his tone almost gentle. Mr. Moretti had this built specifically to protect what matters most. He won't let anything happen to you. You sound certain of that. I've worked for him for 10 years, ma'am. I've never seen him care about anything the way he... Marco stopped, seeming to realize he was saying too much. You're safe here. That's what matters. But as the heavy door sealed shut, as I found myself alone in this underground fortress, I couldn't shake the feeling that safe was relative. Safe from outside threats, maybe. But what about the threat of the man himself? The dangerous, obsessed man who'd married me for reasons I still didn't fully understand. I sank onto the sofa, my legs finally giving out, and stared at the monitors. One showed Dante in what looked like a garage, surrounded by at least a dozen armed men, all of them clearly preparing for something. Even through the grainy camera feed, his authority was absolute. He gestured, and men moved. He spoke, and they listened. A king commanding his army. My husband, my captor, my protector. And somewhere out there, someone wanted to hurt him, which meant they might want to hurt me too. I wrapped my arms around myself and tried not to think about the woman in the photograph upstairs. The woman whose face I wore like a mask I couldn't remove. The woman who had disappeared 15 years ago, leaving behind questions that had shaped Dante Moretti into the man he'd become. What had happened to Isabella Conti? And why did I have the terrible feeling that finding out might destroy whatever fragile safety I'd managed to construct around myself? The monitors showed Dante climbing into an SUV, flanked by his security. The vehicle pulled away, disappearing through gates that closed behind him like jaws. Gone. He was gone, leaving me locked in this beautiful cage, wondering if he'd come back at all, wondering what I'd do if he didn't. 3 hours passed like 3 years in that underground room. I watched the monitors obsessively, tracking movement around the property, seeing guards patrol with increased frequency, catching glimpses of staff moving through the house with nervous efficiency. But no sign of Dante. No word about what was happening beyond these walls. I'd tried the door twice, locked from the outside as I'd expected. The phone on the wall connected only to Marco, who assured me in patient tones that everything was fine, that Mr. Moretti would return soon, that I should try to rest. Rest. As if I could sleep while my husband, that word still felt foreign, was out there doing God knew what in response to an attack on his empire. Around midnight, I finally gave up pacing and curled up on the leather sofa, pulling a blanket over myself. The monitors continued their silent surveillance, casting flickering light across the room. I told myself I'd just close my eyes for a moment. Just rest them. Not actually sleep. The sound of the door opening jolted me awake. I sat up, disoriented, my heart hammering. Dante stood in the doorway, and my breath caught at the sight of him. His white shirt was spattered with something dark. Blood, I realized with horror. His knuckles were bruised and bleeding. A cut along his jaw had been cleaned but not bandaged. He looked like he'd walked through hell and dragged something back with him. You're hurt. The words escaped before I could stop them. Before I could remember I wasn't supposed to care. It's not my blood. His voice was rougher than usual, edged with exhaustion. Mostly. I stood, the blanket falling away, every instinct warring between fear and something else. Concern, maybe, or that traitorous heat that sparked whenever he was near. What happened? Nothing you need to worry about. It's handled. He moved into the room, and I noticed the slight hitch in his gait, the way he favored his left side. We can go back upstairs now. The threat has been neutralized. Neutralized. I wrapped my arms around myself. That's a clinical word for what I'm guessing wasn't a clinical solution. His lips quirked into something too dark to be called a smile. You want details? Want to know how many men I had to hurt tonight to keep you safe? Want to hear about bones breaking and blood spilling? No. The answer came out smaller than I intended. But I want to know if this is my life now. Locked in underground rooms while you go out and do violence in my name. He moved closer, each step deliberate despite his obvious pain. This is the life you married into. This is what it means to be my wife. There are enemies, Sophia, always. People who would love nothing more than to hurt me by taking what's mine. I'm not a thing to be taken, no. He was right in front of me now, towering over me, his presence overwhelming. You're my wife, my responsibility, and I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let anyone touch you. The intensity in his voice, in his eyes, stole my breath. This wasn't just about protection or possession. There was something raw there, something that scared me more than any threat from outside enemies. Your knuckles are bleeding, I said quietly, trying to break the tension. You should clean them properly. He glanced down at his hands as if just noticing the damage. I've had worse. That doesn't mean you should ignore it. I moved toward a cabinet I'd noticed earlier, finding a first aid kit inside. When I turned back, Dante was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Sit. Let me help. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. The lie came easily, though maybe it wasn't entirely a lie. Maybe I just needed to do something normal, something human. To remind myself that the man standing before me wasn't just a monster, despite the blood on his clothes. He sat on the sofa, and I knelt before him, opening the first aid kit with trembling hands. His knuckles were a mess, split skin, already starting to bruise. I cleaned them carefully with antiseptic, feeling him tense at the sting, but not pulling away. Why did you marry me? The question slipped out as I worked. Really? If you think I might be connected to your father's murder, why put a ring on my finger instead of just, I don't know, interrogating me in some warehouse? Because marriage protects you in ways captivity doesn't. His voice was low, rough. As my wife, you're untouchable. As a prisoner, you're leverage anyone could use against me. This way, you're part of the family, protected by every law and tradition that governs our world. I moved to his other hand, cleaning the damage there. And if you find out I am somehow connected, what then? His fingers curled slightly under my touch, and when I looked up, his dark eyes were boring into mine. Then I'll deal with it. But until I have proof, until I know for certain, he reached out with his clean hand, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. You're my wife. That means something to me, even if it doesn't to you. It's only been one day. My voice came out breathless. You can't possibly feel anything for me. This is about her. About Isabella. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. You're right. I don't know you, but I look at you, and I see. He stopped, his jaw clenching. I see possibilities, questions, things I thought I'd buried 15 years ago. I finished bandaging his knuckles, my hands shaking slightly. You need to clean that cut on your jaw too. Sophia, please. I needed him to stop looking at me like that. Like I was both the answer and the question. Like I mattered in ways that went beyond conspiracy theories and resemblances to dead women's fiancés. He sighed, but tilted his head, giving me access to the cut. I dampened a clean cloth and pressed it gently against the wound. He hissed but didn't pull away, his eyes never leaving my face. You're good at this, he murmured. Playing nurse. My mother got sick a lot when I was younger. I learned. The memory hurt. Simpler times when the biggest worry was whether we'd have enough money for medicine, not whether my husband was going to come home covered in blood. Tell me about her. Your family. His request surprised me. Why? Because I want to know you. Because you're my wife, and I know nothing about you except that you're afraid of me and you look like a ghost from my past. I sat back on my heels, considering. Maybe giving him pieces of my ordinary life would help him see I was just a person, not some pawn in an ancient game. My mother is kind. Too kind, maybe. She sees the best in everyone, even when they don't deserve it. My father works too hard, always has. The bakery has been in his family for 3 generations, and Marco... My voice caught. Marco was the golden child. Smart, charming, always getting into trouble, but somehow getting out of it too. Until he didn't. Your brother stole from me because of a gambling debt, Dante said quietly. Did you know he had a problem? No. None of us did. He hid it well. Bitterness crept into my tone, right up until he destroyed everything. He didn't destroy everything. Dante's hand came up to cup my jaw, forcing me to meet his eyes. He changed things, drastically. But you're alive, Sophia. Your family is alive. In my world, that counts for something. At what cost? I whispered. My freedom? My future? Everything I thought my life would be? Maybe your life was always meant to be more than a bakery. His thumb traced my lower lip, the touch sending unwanted electricity through me. Maybe this was always where you were supposed to end up. You don't believe in fate. I didn't, until I lifted that veil and saw your face. His voice dropped lower, more intimate, until I felt something I thought died with my father 15 years ago. Warning bells screamed in my head even as my body leaned into his touch. Dante, this is insane. You can't... Can't what? Feel something for my wife? He pulled me up onto the sofa beside him, close enough that I could smell blood and gunpowder, and underneath it all, that scent of sandalwood and whiskey that was becoming dangerously familiar. Can't want to protect you? Can't imagine keeping you even after I figure out this mystery? Keeping me. I tried to pull back, but his arm had snaked around my waist, holding me in place, like I'm a possession. Like you're mine. His eyes burned into me. There's a difference. Is there? My heart hammered against my ribs, because from where I'm sitting it feels the same. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. Then maybe you're not paying attention. The kiss wasn't like the chaste press of lips at our wedding. This was claiming, possessive, demanding. His mouth moved against mine with an intensity that stole my breath, his hand fisting in my hair to angle my head exactly where he wanted it. I should have fought, should have pushed him away, should have remembered that this man had bought me, owned me, was dangerous in ways I couldn't even comprehend. But my body had other ideas. My hands found his shoulders, gripping the blood-stained fabric of his shirt as I kissed him back with equal desperation. It was wrong and terrifying, and somehow exactly what I needed after hours of fear and uncertainty. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His eyes had gone nearly black with want, his grip on my waist tightening. This doesn't change anything, I managed, my voice shaking. I'm still here against my will. You still don't know if you can trust me. No, he pressed his forehead against mine. But I know I don't want to let you go. I know that the thought of someone hurting you tonight made me capable of things that would horrify you. I know that 3 days isn't enough time to feel this way about someone. But here we are. Feel what way? I needed him to say it, needed to hear the words even though they terrified me. Possessive, protective, obsessed. Each word was punctuated with a soft kiss along my jaw. Like you're the answer to a question I've been asking for 15 years, even if I don't understand how yet. I pulled back enough to look at him properly, seeing past the blood and violence to the man underneath. Damaged, lonely, carrying grief that had shaped him into something hard and unyielding. What if I'm not her? What if this resemblance is just cruel coincidence, and there are no answers? Then I'll have to learn to live with the questions. His hand came up to cradle my face. But I'll do it with you beside me, as my wife, as mine. The possessiveness should have angered me, should have made me fight harder. But exhaustion and fear and the aftermath of adrenaline had left me wrung out, unable to summon the energy to resist. I'm tired, I whispered. So tired of being scared. Something softened in his expression. Then let me take you to bed. Your bed, he clarified, seeing the panic that must have shown on my face. I told you. I won't force myself on you, but I will keep you safe, even if that means sleeping outside your door like a guard dog. The image was absurd enough to draw a watery laugh from me. The great Dante Moretti, sleeping on the floor. For you? Apparently, yes. He stood, pulling me up with him, his hands gentle despite their strength. Come. You need rest. Tomorrow we'll start investigating your family history. See if there's really a connection to Isabella, or if this is just the universe playing games. We made our way back upstairs, Dante's hand never leaving the small of my back. The house was quiet, most of the staff having retired. Only a few guards remained visible, their eyes tracking our progress with professional detachment. At my door, Dante paused. Lock it if it makes you feel safer. But know that I'll be right across the hall. If you need anything at all, you call for me. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why do you care so much? He studied me for a long moment, something raw and painful flickering across his features. Because when I lost my father, I lost the ability to feel much of anything. I buried it all under concrete and steel, built walls so high nothing could touch me. And then you walk down that aisle, and for the first time in 15 years, I felt something crack, something break open. He leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to my forehead. Maybe you're dangerous, Sophia. Maybe you'll destroy me, but right now, I don't care. Right now, I just want to keep you close and figure out why looking at you feels like coming home to a place I've never been. Then he was gone, crossing the hall to his own door, leaving me standing in my doorway with my heart racing and my mind spinning. I entered my room, locking the door as he'd suggested, and leaned against it, trying to process everything that had happened. The attack, the blood, the kiss, his confession that he felt something for me, something dangerous and consuming and far too intense for the short time we'd known each other. I should have been terrified, should have been planning escape routes and thinking of ways to break free from this golden cage. But as I changed into the silk nightgown someone had left on my bed, as I slipped under covers softer than clouds, All I could think about was the look in Dante's eyes when he'd kissed me, like I mattered. Like I was more than a transaction or a resemblance or a puzzle to solve. Like I was his, and he was willing to burn the world to keep it that way. I closed my eyes, exhaustion finally claiming me, and my last thought before sleep took me was that I was in terrible, terrible danger. Not from outside threats or mysterious attackers, but from the possibility that I might actually be starting to care about the monster who'd made me his wife. Morning light filtered through the gauze curtains, painting golden stripes across my bed. For a moment, one blissful, disoriented moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed back with the weight of the diamond ring on my finger, the silk sheets against my skin, the memory of blood on white fabric and a kiss that had tasted like danger and something darker. A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. "Mrs. Moretti, may I come in?" Maria. I sat up, pulling the covers around myself. "Yes." She entered carrying a tray, coffee, fresh fruit, pastries that smelled like they'd just come from the oven. "Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you breakfast. He's in meetings all morning but requests that you join him in his study at noon." Requests. Such a polite word for what was clearly a command. "Thank you." I took the coffee gratefully, letting the warmth seep into my hands. "Maria? How long have you worked here?" She set the tray on the bedside table, her movements careful. 3 years, ma'am." "Have you ever seen Mr. Moretti like this, with someone?" Her eyes widened slightly, and I saw calculation there, weighing what was safe to say. "No, ma'am. Mr. Moretti keeps his personal life very private." The staff was surprised to learn of the wedding. "But..." She hesitated. "But what?" "He's different since you arrived. More present. He usually buries himself in work, barely notices when we're in the room. But yesterday he changed his entire schedule. And last night, when he returned from handling the situation, the first thing he did was check on you. That's not like him." The information sat heavy in my chest. I didn't want to matter to him, didn't want this strange connection that seemed to be forming despite every reason it shouldn't exist. After Maria left, I showered and dressed in clothes from the extensive wardrobe, dark jeans and a simple cream sweater, refusing to play dress-up more than necessary. My reflection showed a woman who looked more rested than she felt, her eyes holding shadows that hadn't been there 4 days ago. I had hours before noon, hours to explore this prison or cage or home. I still wasn't sure which word fit best. I left my room, immediately noticing the guard positioned discreetly down the hall. He nodded at me but didn't speak, his presence both reassuring and restricting. The house revealed itself slowly as I wandered. A library with floor-to-ceiling books, many in Italian. A music room with a grand piano that looked antique and probably priceless. A conservatory filled with exotic plants and the sound of a fountain. Each room spoke of wealth accumulated over generations, of power that came with old money and older traditions. I found myself drawn back to the formal dining room where we'd eaten last night, studying the portraits on the walls. Moretti ancestors stared down with stern expressions, their painted eyes following me as I moved. I stopped at one. A man in his 40s with Dante's eyes and jaw, painted maybe 20 years ago. My father. Dante's voice behind me made me jump. He stood in the doorway, wearing dark slacks and a charcoal shirt, looking like he'd slept and showered away all evidence of last night's violence. Only the cut on his jaw and his bandaged knuckles remained, commissioned when I was 8. He hated sitting for it. "You look like him." "So I've been told." He moved closer, studying the portrait with an expression I couldn't read. He was a hard man. Fair, but hard. Demanded excellence, accepted nothing less. But he loved deeply when he let himself. "Like with Isabella." "Yes." He turned to me, his dark eyes intense in the morning light. "I had my people working through the night. Your family history. Looking for connections." My stomach clenched. "And?" "Your father's village, San Marco, on the coast of Campania. Population less than 500. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo of a small fishing village. White buildings clustered around a harbor, boats bobbing in azure water. Isabella's mother was from the same village. They would have been the same generation. The floor seemed to tilt. "That doesn't mean..." "Your father's mother was named Conti before she married. Maria Conti." His voice was gentle but relentless. "Isabella's aunt." I gripped the back of a nearby chair, needing support. "No, that's impossible. My father never mentioned..." Because he probably didn't know the significance. "Small villages. Everyone is related somehow, but it means you and Isabella are cousins. Second cousins, but still family. He pocketed his phone. It explains the resemblance, genetics expressing similarly across generations. Relief and confusion warred in my chest. So I'm not... There's no conspiracy. Just family resemblance. Just family. Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or relief of his own. Which means you're innocent in all this. Just a woman caught in her brother's mess, paying for his sins. And now? What happens now that you know? I forced myself to meet his gaze. Do you let me go? Annul the marriage? His expression hardened. Is that what you want? I want... The words stuck in my throat. What did I want? Freedom, yes. My old life back. But that life was gone. Burned away the moment Marco had stolen from the wrong people. And the alternative? Returning to a world where I'd always be the girl whose brother owed the mob. Where my family would never be safe. That terrified me more than staying. I want to understand what this is. What we are. Come with me. He offered his hand. And after a heartbeat of hesitation, I took it. His fingers closed around mine, warm and strong, as he led me back to the study where Isabella's photo watched from the wall of obsession. But something had changed. The strings had been cut, the connections removed. Only a few key pieces remained. Isabella's photo, his father's murder report, a handful of documents. I started taking it down this morning, Dante said quietly. 15 years of searching, and the answer was simpler than I thought. She wasn't part of the murder. She ran because she was terrified. Because my father's enemies would have used her against him if they'd found her. How do you know? Because I finally found her. He pulled up something on his computer. A death certificate. Isabella Conti died 8 years ago in Argentina. Breast cancer. She never married, never had children. She spent her life running from a tragedy she wasn't part of, dying alone an ocean away from home. The sadness in his voice cracked something inside me. I squeezed his hand. I'm sorry. So am I. Sorry I wasted 15 years chasing ghosts. Sorry I let it consume me. He turned to me, framing my face with both hands, but not sorry it led me to you. Dante, I know this started wrong. I know I gave you no choice, that I bought you like property to pay a debt. His thumbs traced my cheekbones, his touch achingly gentle, but I'm asking now, not as your owner or captor, as your husband. Stay with me. Let me court you properly. Let me show you who I am beyond the violence and blood. My heart hammered. And if I say no, if I want to leave, pain flashed across his features, but he didn't look away. Then I'll let you go. I'll make sure your family is protected, that your brother's debt is forgiven, that you have everything you need to start over somewhere safe. I won't keep you prisoner, Sophia. Not anymore. The words should have brought relief. Instead, they brought confusion, and something dangerously close to disappointment. You'd really let me walk away, if that's what you wanted, if staying here was truly unbearable. His forehead pressed against mine, but I'm hoping you'll give me a chance. Give us a chance. Because when I look at you, I don't see Isabella anymore. I see you. Sophia. The woman who bandaged my hands without being asked. Who stood up to me even when she was terrified. Who kisses me back like maybe, just maybe, she feels this thing between us too. This thing that's only existed for 2 days. Time is relative when you've been numb for 15 years. His lips brushed mine, soft and questioning. So what do you say, wife? Will you stay? I should have said no. Should have demanded my freedom and run back to my simple life. But that life was ashes now, and standing here in Dante's arms, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to leave. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'll stay, I whispered, but on conditions. He pulled back slightly, curiosity and hope warring in his expression. Name them. I want to see my family. Regularly. I want them protected. Always. I took a breath. I want to know what you do. No more secrets about warehouses and attacks and whatever violence comes with your world. If I'm part of this life, I need to understand it. Done. I want my own money, my own accounts. So if I ever decide to leave, I can. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Agreed. And I want time. Real time. To get to know you. To figure out if this can be something real beyond obligation and debt. How much time? I don't know. As much as it takes. I met his eyes steadily. Can you give me that? Can you be patient? A smile curved his lips, genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that transformed his entire face. For you. I can be patient. I've waited 15 years for answers. I can wait a little longer for you to realize you want to stay. Cocky. Confident. He kissed me properly then, deep and slow. his hands sliding into my hair. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. But I'll earn it, Sophia. Every day I'll show you why choosing me was the right decision. The weeks that followed proved he meant every word. Dante courted me like we were new lovers instead of forced spouses. Dinners where we talked for hours about everything and nothing. Walks through the gardens where he taught me the names of roses he'd had planted for his mother. Nights where he played piano in the music room. His fingers coaxing beauty from keys. His eyes never leaving mine. He introduced me to his world gradually, carefully. I met his advisors, men who treated me with respect because Dante demanded it. I learned about his legitimate businesses alongside the less legal ones, understanding how he'd built an empire that straddled both worlds. I saw the violence too, the reality of what he did to keep his power. And while it scared me, I also saw the code he lived by, the honor that governed even his darkest actions. My family came to dinner one Sunday, my mother crying happy tears to see me safe and well. My father stunned by the house and the life I now lived. Marco sent a letter from wherever Dante had sent him, somewhere safe, somewhere he could start over away from gambling and debts. The letter was full of apologies I wasn't ready to accept, but maybe someday. 3 months after our wedding, Dante took me back to San Marco, the village that connected us through generations. We walked the narrow streets where our ancestors had lived, stood on the dock where fishing boats still came in with the day's catch. An old woman recognized the name Conti, remembered Isabella's mother, told stories about the girl who'd been so beautiful, who'd fallen for a man from the city and disappeared into a different world. She never came back, the woman said sadly. After he died, she just vanished. We always wondered what happened to her. She was afraid, I said softly, understanding it now. She loved him so much that his death broke something inside her. She ran because staying would have destroyed her. Dante's hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. That night, in a small hotel overlooking the sea, he made love to me for the first time. Tender and passionate and nothing like I'd feared. He worshipped my body with his hands and mouth, whispered words in Italian I didn't understand but felt in my bones, and when it was over, when we lay tangled together in sheets smelling of salt air and us, he said the words I'd been waiting to hear. Ti amo, Sophia. I love you. Not because you look like her, not because fate or coincidence or family connections brought you to me, but because you're you, because you're strong and brave and you see me, really see me, and you haven't run away. I love you too. The words came easier than I'd expected, flowing like water finding its course. Even though you're dangerous and possessive and you bought me like livestock. He laughed, the sound rich and warm. In my defense, I didn't know I'd fall in love with the livestock. I smacked his shoulder, but I was smiling. Terrible. Truthful. He rolled, pinning me beneath him, his eyes dark with renewed heat. You're mine, Sophia Moretti. Not because I bought you. Because you chose to stay. Because you gave me a chance I didn't deserve. And you're mine, I countered, pulling him down for a kiss. My dangerous, obsessive, surprisingly tender husband who plays piano and plants roses and would burn the world for me, without hesitation. His lips found my neck, trailing fire. Every single time. 6 months later, I stood in that same music room where I'd first heard him play, my hand resting on the slight swell of my stomach. Dante played a new composition, something soft and hopeful that he'd written for the child we'd discovered I was carrying. Our daughter, if the ultrasound was right. A new generation of Morettis, born from violence and debt, but raised in love. He finished playing and turned to me, his eyes bright with emotion. What do you think? It's perfect. I moved to him, letting him pull me onto his lap, his hand covering mine on my stomach. She'll love it. Isabella. He said the name carefully, watching my reaction. If you're comfortable with it, to honor the woman whose genetics brought you to me, to remember that love lost doesn't have to stay lost. Tears pricked my eyes. Isabella Moretti. I think that's beautiful. He kissed me softly, reverently, his hand splayed protectively over where our daughter grew. Thank you. For staying. For giving me this. For teaching me that the heart I thought died with my father was just sleeping, waiting for the right person to wake it. Thank you for being patient. For letting me choose you instead of just accepting that you'd chosen me. I rested my head on his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent. For showing me that sometimes the scariest choices lead to the most beautiful destinations. Outside, thunder rumbled, a storm moving in from the sea. But inside, in Dante's arms, I felt nothing but warmth, nothing but safety, nothing but love that had grown from the most unlikely soil, blooming against all odds into something real and lasting and true. The debt that had brought us together was long paid. My brother had built a new life in Boston, sending photos of his job at a restaurant, his small apartment, his sponsor from Gamblers Anonymous. My parents visited monthly, my mother already knitting tiny clothes and planning for her grandchild. The threats that had locked me in underground rooms had been neutralized, Dante's empire secure and growing. We'd started from darkness, from violence and fear and forced vows spoken under duress. But we'd found light, found love, found a future neither of us had expected in the ruins of plans that had never been meant for us. "What are you thinking?" Dante murmured against my hair. "That I'm grateful." I tilted my face up to his, that Marco's terrible choices led me here, that your father's tragedy and Isabella's fear and family connections we never knew existed all conspired to bring us together. That maybe fate is real after all. Or maybe we just got lucky. He kissed my forehead, my nose, my lips. "Either way, I'm keeping you, forever. No annulments, no second thoughts, no escape clauses. Promise? Promise." His hand tightened on mine, his wedding ring catching the light beside my own. "You're mine, Sophia, and I'm yours. For better or worse, in darkness and light, until death parts us. And maybe not even then," I whispered, thinking of Isabella and Dante's father, of love that had echoed across generations to bring me here. Maybe not even then. The storm broke against the windows, rain lashing the glass, wind howling through the gardens. But inside, wrapped in my husband's arms, our daughter safe between us, I'd never felt more at peace, more home. I'd been bought as payment for a debt, married to a monster I didn't know, trapped in a life I'd never chosen. But somehow, impossibly, I'd found love in the darkness, found a man beneath the monster, found a future I wanted to fight for. And as Dante carried me upstairs to our bedroom, not separate rooms anymore, but one shared space where we built our life together, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. To stay, to love, to build something beautiful from broken pieces, to become exactly who I was always meant to be. Sophia Moretti, wife of the most dangerous man in the city, mother-to-be, and the woman who'd finally taught a heart frozen in grief how to beat again.